Hey there, my name's Niandra and I wanted to do a video with some tips on playing with or pocketing each hero as Mercy. You know, little things you can do to help your teammates. If you watched my previous general damage boost video guide, you may have noticed I didn't include many hero specific tips. This is because the video had already gotten super long and I wanted to cover them here instead, so let's get started with DPS. With Symmetra, if you go through her teleporter while in flight, you will retain any movement on the other side. So for example, if you're super jumping, you'll do so on the other side. If you are not super jumping, you will carry the meter to the other side. Another thing to consider is that you leave Symmetra's teleporter facing whichever direction you were when you entered. So what you could do with this is fly to the teleporter, turn at the last moment, and then backwards GA behind cover on the other side. All this being said though, teleport has a max range of 30 meters, which is shorter than Guardian Angels, so you will always be able to fly to the other end if you're at one of the bases. This is usually safer than going through the teleporter yourself because it allows you to keep better distance from allies and more control over your position. With Ashe, consider her one of your highest priority pocket targets. In my last video, I said that Mercy gets no ult charge for damage boosting Bob, which my apologies, I did get wrong. In reality, you do get ult charge for blue beaming Bob, but you don't seem to get any for healing him. In any case, I very rarely heal Bob because I assume he'll take more damage than I can stabilize, so I might as well get him more blue beam before he drops. I will often ignore healing injured allies to boost him if I can afford to, since that auto aim damage can be pretty nasty, especially against uncoordinated or panicking teams. With Bastion, you can damage boost his ultimate, and sometimes it can be worth body blocking him during it if it's activated close to a fight. Besides that, I mostly just flick damage boost onto him when he's in tank form and prioritize the other DPS when he's in regular mode. With Cassidy, if you damage boost his magnetic grenade and he gets the stick, you can one-shot a tracer, making him a pretty good pocket against her. Besides that, I like to body block Cassidy during his ultimate by standing in front of him because he can target enemies through me. With Echo, when she copies a tank, her health will cap out at 300, and keep this in mind because Mercy's target UI doesn't make this immediately obvious. Echo already gets increased ult charge when she's in duplicate form, so I am less inclined to damage boost her when she's injured and mostly just want to keep her from falling out of ult. Besides that, hard pocket Echo as much as you can afford to. She has this great consistent combo, right, where she uses sticky bombs and then follows it up with the beam. Well, if Echo is damage boosted and lands all the stickies on a 200 HP target, she doesn't need the follow-up because that enemy is dropped. With Genji, honestly, my best advice for new players is just don't underestimate him as a damage boost target, both outside of his ultimate and during Dragon Blade, and that is pretty much it. Backwards Guardian Angel can make it pretty simple to get your beam on him and follow his aggressive plays, and so can little camera view flicks onto high ground. I like to put extra effort into assisting him against teams that are weak to Dragon Blade, especially if the enemy team has Mercy and 4 supports. With Hanzo, his wall climb often lets him flank or play from different angles to the rest of the team. When you follow him, the threat of both of you can potentially create some nice space for your other teammates. For example, because Hanzo doesn't have to charge his arrows up as much when damage boosted, enemy snipers or supports may need to back off more or play more carefully. Besides that, look out for his storm arrows because they can be solid to damage boost, especially if you see him aiming at a shield. Do note, Mercy doesn't get any ult charge or hit markers for damage boosting allies that are attacking shields, but that doesn't mean it's not worth it. With Junkrat, I will sometimes body block him when he's ulting if he's under light damage, like if he uses it too close to the fight or something. Besides that, he is a solid damage boost target, but usually overshadowed by allies with more consistent damage. Because of this, I mainly boost him when enemies are bunched up or in small rooms or before they've properly pushed in. With Mei, if she ice blocks, the game will consider LOS on your beam broken and you can't beam her when she's in it, right? This means you want to be careful about making her your primary beam target during Valkyrie because your chain beams will be destroyed instantly if Mei goes into ice block. With Pharah, I've said this before, but sometimes she will be low enough that you can beam her from the ground, and that can be safer than playing in the air, especially if you use cover or are against hit scan and snipers. Now, if you are in the air and use Guardian Angel, you probably don't always want to shoot in the direction you're facing. You really want to keep your movement unpredictable, so make sure to frequently cancel Guardian Angel early to keep distance from your Pharah. Backwards Guardian Angels can be great as well, and so can suddenly changing your movement to dart behind high up cover. Plus, some maps have slanted roofs for you to slide on. Anyway, besides all that, when Pharah is ulting, you can fly to her and hover in front of her face with Angelic Descent to body block, but this carries some pretty big risks. I very much recommend Mercy mains try this in quick play before doing it in competitive, unless they really think they can get away with it. With Reaper, because he gains back health from doing damage, I like to blue beam him when injured and then flick to healing when he goes into Wraith form or reloads if I can afford to, and you can get into a really nice rhythm with this. That being said, all this does kind of rely on him being very close to enemies because his range is so short, like his damage becomes trash really fast. Attaching your beam onto him when he starts Wraith form can be useful, like it can give you a nice long flight path, or you can give him a burstier start. Just be cautious about giving away his position. With Sojourn, if you are not hard pocketing her, which you probably should be, at least look out for her disruptor shot hitting a lot of people, and when she's glowing blue, because that means she has a charged shot ready. I very much expect this will get patched, but currently Sojourn does not one-shot with a fully charged headshot, but she does when she's damage boosted, so really just try to stick with her as much as you can. With Soldier, if I'm healing him and he places down his biotic field, I will usually switch to damage boost if he's not under pressure. Now obviously be wary if Soldier is really low, but this should generally be fine if he's only missing a tiny bit of health and increases team utility really nicely. With Sombra, fairly obvious, but be careful about beaming her when she's invisible. To an enemy it looks like this, and keep in mind you have that healing effect now as well. Sadly you cannot damage boost Sombra's EMP damage anymore, however your damage amp does stack with her increased damage on hacked targets, so if you see an enemy red behind a wall and Sombra going for them, you may want to follow up on it with damage boost. With Torbjorn, I mostly damage boost him when he's in overload mode and prioritise others when he's not. Besides that, it can be worth keeping the position of his turret in mind because playing near it can sometimes be useful, especially against characters like Tracer or Sombra. With Tracer, I've always considered her to be a pretty underrated damage boost target. I'm not saying to pocket her or anything like that, but some Mercy players seem to refuse to touch her, and I don't think you should completely write her off either, especially on capture points where she may be close to you. I have mentioned this in a few videos now, but what I like to do is get my beam on her, mostly at the beginning of a fight, damage boost her when she blinks in, and then do something else when the beam breaks. Also keep an eye on Tracer's health and keep her full, because the lower her health goes, the easier it becomes to one-shot her, and the other support may struggle to help. With Widowmaker, try to keep her position in the back of your minds because she'll often be behind the rest of your team, which can make for a good escape route if things get hairy. Also, when Widow is damage boosted, she needs to charge her shots up less, so I like to flick my beam onto her after she goes for a grapple shot. Alright, let's move on to the tanks. With D.Va, remember that allies get more ult charge when damage boosted, and in 5v5 it's really crucial to boost her when she's out of mech so she gets it back faster. This is especially important on attack if D.Va gets demeched before your team has a chance to push in, because you might just be stuck around waiting for her. Besides that, it can be worth flicking damage boost onto D.Va when she boosts towards an enemy because she'll probably be looking to burst them down. Also, some D.Va players feed their tits off, and it's so easy to get stuck in a cycle as Mercy where you're just constantly healing her, so watch out for this. See if you can leave the healing to your other support, or maybe even just consider switching. With Doomfist, make sure to keep him topped up and healthy during his power block so he can play aggressively afterwards. Besides that, consider damage boosting Doomfist when he uses mobility to engage, and remember that sometimes he can come to you for healing instead of you having to go to him. With Junker, if you want to boost her various damage over time effects and self-healing, you need to keep damage boosting her. If your beam disconnects from Junker, your amplification immediately stops. When she uses ult, Junker briefly stands still, which can give you a moment to flick your beam onto her. When she uses ult while slightly injured and looks to hit a good few enemies, damage boost her and let her heal herself. She will probably go out of range and your beam may soon break, but those couple of seconds can help a lot. With Orisa, you are able to damage boost her ultimate, which can actually be pretty solid now that it goes through shields. Besides that, if I notice my Orisa spear an enemy into the wall, if I can react fast enough, I sometimes like to flick damage boost onto her to help her confirm the elimination. With Ramattra, all of his abilities are boostable. I really like to pocket him through his ultimate if I can afford to. Generally, I will heal if he's under pressure and damage boost if enemies are trying to back off or run away. His primary fire also doesn't have damage drop off, so if you find yourself in a position without much range, like maybe during the poke phase before a fight has started, he might not be a bad choice. Also, as I mentioned earlier, your teammates do get more ult charge when damage boosted, and because of that, it can be worth damage boosting Ramattra when there's like 30 to 40 seconds left of the round to make sure he has it in overtime because it's so strong there. With Reinhardt, try to use and prioritize natural terrain and cover over his shield when possible. Not only will this build good self-sufficient positioning habits, but it's safer if your Rein plays unpredictably. For example, when he goes for a fire strike, his shield is lifted, which could potentially expose you. Also, after your Rein earth shatters, it can sometimes be worth following up with your pistol if allies can't react and it's just him, because you will have the range to hit those that aren't so close. With Roadhog, you know the drill, try to flick your blue beam onto him when he hooks someone, especially if it's a tank. There is plenty of audio and visual cues to know when this happens, even if you're not looking at him. Besides that, if Roadhog is missing a chunk of health but not actively taking damage, generally try to let him heal himself because he gets a lot of ult charge from it and you can do something else. Say Roadhog starts vaping while you are healing him, don't be afraid to switch beam targets. With Sigma, his ultimate is a bit weird in that you can damage boost the initial lift up damage, but not the slam back down. That being said, I think it can often still be worth blue beaming him through his ultimate because he should know who he's picked up and who the high priority targets are. Also, with his rock, you can boost it if you flick the blue beam onto him during the creation animation, so look out for that. However, if the rock has left his hands and is travelling, you are too late. With Winston, you really want to keep an eye on what he's doing because there's a lot of good opportunities to give him a bit of damage boost. So I have 3 main examples here. For starters, when Winston leaps and lands on an enemy, that does damage, so watch out for him looking to engage, especially at the start of a fight. Number 2, if he's in a 1v1 against someone who can't burst him down, like a support, you can use his large health pool to your advantage to push damage boost even if he's injured, then heal when the elimination is confirmed. Then thirdly, if he's dancing in his bubble, that can also be a great opportunity as well. With Wrecking Ball, generally let him do his own thing, but keep an eye out for him looking to engage by swinging into enemies or doing ground pounds. They are really easy to spot and react to, making them solid damage boost moments. It's also easy to autopilot and spend all game healing Wrecking Ball, especially because of how much ult charge it gives, so be wary about falling into that cycle. Keep in mind, he should be making good use of health packs. With Zarya, if she's both injured and high charge, I like to make sure her health is in the shield range, and then I'll generally flick between damage boost and healing, because the blue parts of her health can regenerate over time if she doesn't take damage. And last of all, let's talk supports. With Ana, ideally you should put a lot of trust in her because she can enable Mercy to do so much. For example, if Ana can heal allies in faraway risky positions and that stops you from having to put yourself in danger to help them, hey, that's great. One thing a lot of Ana players really dislike is a heal heavy Mercy who sticks with her tank like glue. Ideally, you should let her heal the tank when possible to build nano quickly and primarily stick with DPS. All of that being said, the thing with Ana is she takes quite a bit of skill to play and not everyone will play her optimally, so it's worth gauging her level as the match goes on so you can adjust. For example, if your Ana struggles to hit you when you're highly mobile, you may want to use corners more so health regen kicks in. Besides that, follow up on her sleeps with damage boost even if it means blue beaming her. With Baptiste, damage boost your heart out, keep an eye on him, and don't underestimate him as a blue beam target in moments where he's doing damage or using ult. Baptiste is a fantastic co-support to have, but I don't think Mercy really needs to do anything special for him. Maybe be cautious if you want to res and he throws his lamp super early as an indicator that you should go for it, especially if lamp is out in the open instead of around a corner, but that's basically it. With Brigette, you can sometimes let her Inspire cover small bits of chip damage, especially on your DPS. Very niche case, but Brig can proc her Inspire off Wrecking Ball mines, so if your team has won a fight and the mines aren't around, maybe it's worth letting her destroy them while you do something else. Besides that, I like to keep an eye on Brig's health and keep her topped up even with the support passive. Inspire needs her to do fairly close range damage, and Brig can't do that if she's too afraid to even lower the shield. With Kiriko, if you're safe, she's safe. So for example, if Kiriko is stuck in a bad position, sometimes it's best to stay back so she can teleport to you rather than you fly forward to help her and both end up in danger. With Lucio, pairing him with Mercy isn't great, but it can work sometimes. The thing with these two is that their low healing can sometimes force them away from the utility you are usually running them for. So Lucio can't speed boost as much because he has to heal, Mercy can't damage boost as much for the same reason. This is a dynamic that you will constantly have to keep in mind and adjust to. Ask yourself, is my tank able to actually play the game or are they forced to be passive? If so, is that passiveness hurting us? A Reinhardt is going to be so much more miserable here than a Roadhog who can vape the pain away until he forgets that neither support plays Kiriko. If you want to go for a res, you'll need to consider if the rest of your team is okay with a few seconds of only Lucio's healing. People say that Mercy mains are stubborn about not switching, but Lucio's are just as bad, if not worse, so you will probably be the one that needs to switch if it's not working. With Moira, I'm really cautious not to step on her toes because her healing is resource based. What I mean by this is if I see her helping someone, I really want to ask myself if that person needs both of us or if I can do something else instead, and very often the answer will be yes, I can. Moira doesn't bring much utility to the team, so it's really important that Mercy does in the form of damage boost. Also, Moira plays a voice line when she runs out of resources.
I cannot heal you yet.
Listen out for this because you may then want to briefly shift away from that blue beam heavy playstyle. With Zenyatta, it is pretty easy to see who has his orb, so if they aren't actively taking damage, I generally try to beam someone else. If the enemy team is highly mobile, Zenyatta is probably going to be who gets targeted first and the most, so watch out for enemies using their cooldowns to push him. For example, here I see enemy Winston jumping behind my team and Zen is the only one not in my camera view, meaning he's probably behind me. In cases like this, it's crucial I'm fast to help him and potentially pocket him through the attack. And there we go, thank you for watching. Once again, I have made a video that came out way longer than I intended it to. Thank you so much for watching, consider liking, subscribing, commenting, joining my Discord, coming to my house for dinner, yeah, all of that. Have a nice day, thank you.